everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about anatomical directional terms and planes. So we're going to get right into it by looking at a couple of pictures that we have here today to help us understand the different anatomical directional terms and the planes that the body can be divided into. We're going to start over here on this side. And I just wanted to go over the different lines that we see because these can really help us in differentiating the different terms. So first of all, this line that is running down the side of the body is going to differentiate the front half and the back half of the body. So as you can see, this man is facing towards the forward side, which means that this entire side of his body is going to be facing forward. And then the opposite side, the one that is from his back, is going to be the side that is facing back. So, and then the other two lines here that we have, this one that is above the number 3 is just differentiating where the head is. So where the top of the head is. And then the one at the bottom here is just indicating where the toes are or where the feet are. So starting off with our terms, we're going to begin with number 1 here. So number 1, like we mentioned, is facing towards, or actually pointing towards, the forward side of the body. So the front half of the body. Now in anatomical terms, this is going to be called the anterior, or there's another name for it called the ventral side of the body. And on the opposite side, we have number 2, which is facing or pointing towards the backward side. And number 2 is going to be called the posterior or dorsal part of the body. One thing that helps me remember the difference between especially dorsal and ventral is that if you think of fish, they have one dorsal fin that is on the back of their body. So it's on their back, which means that dorsal on us is also going to be on the back side of our body. So now that that is clear, let's move on to terms 3 and 4. So as you can see, term 3 is pointing towards the top of our head. So term 3 is going to have something to do with being higher up on our bodies, which means that in anatomical terms, term number 3 is superior. I'm just figuring out where to write the terms. So term number 3 is going to be superior. And as I mentioned, this is going to be towards the top of our body, so meaning towards the head. And then on the other side, we have number 4, which is going to be inferior. And it's quite literally the opposite of superior, so this one is easy to remember. And as I mentioned before, this is towards the feet of the body, so you can either think of it as away from the head, or you can think of it as towards the feet. So anything that's away from the head is going to be inferior. And then superior is anything that's going towards the higher part of our body. Okay, so we have finished with this half of the picture. So let's move on to terms 5 through 8. So one important thing to note before we go on to the terms is this dotted line that's dividing the body into the left and right portions. So as they labeled it here, this is called the midline, and I can further elaborate here. It divides the body into left and right. Okay. So now that this has been established, it will really help us in defining terms number 5 and 6. So as you can see, term number 5 is pointing towards the midline of the body. and anything that is towards the midline of the body is going to be called medial. So this is just the anatomical term for it. And then number 6, anything that's pointing away from the midline is going to be called lateral. Oops. Okay, lateral. So something that I use to memorize these two terms, and it especially helps me with defining lateral because I know that lateral is the opposite of medial. So if you think about doing lateral lunges, it means that instead of standing straight in the middle, your lunges are going out towards the side. So you're stepping out towards the side, which means that if something is lateral, it's going out towards the side instead of coming back in. Okay? So for number 7 and number 8, we need to define one more term that's going to help us with these both terms. So the term that we need to define is called the trunk of the body. So the trunk of the body is basically the part that contains our abdominal section, which is here, and our thoracic section, which is basically our chest. And this is going to be called the trunk of the body. So for number 7 and number 8, as you can see, number 7 is pointing towards the trunk of the body, and number 8 is going away from the trunk of the body. So for number 7, the anatomical term for this is going to be called proximal. And then for number 8, pointing away from the trunk of the body is going to be called distal. For me, I just had to memorize proximal and distal because I'm not really sure if there are any tricks to memorize it. But if you come up with them, be sure to use them and make a note of them somewhere so that you can memorize them easier. Okay, so now that we've finished with the directional terms, we can move on to the planes of the body. So the different planes of the body are really important when doctors or when pathologists are trying to define something and see which plane of the body that suppose an injury or anything really happens in the body. So they just define it like using the planes and also using the anatomical directional terms that we just learned. So for the planes, we're just going to start off by learning about them. There's 3 different planes of the body. I'm going to start with this one down here. So it might be a little bit hard to visualize it from the picture, so I'm just going to try to highlight it maybe and see if that will work better. So we have one plane here. I know it's not doing such a great job of highlighting right now. So the plane that I'm referring to is the one that I just highlighted, and I'll highlight the other ones in different colors. This term is going to be called the transverse plane. And transverse, it's going to be dividing our body into the upper and lower halves of our body. So you can also think of it as superior or inferior parts of our bodies. And it is, it divides us directly in half, essentially. I have to erase this part because we're writing another name of a plane over here. So, yeah. Okay, so for this plane, I'm going to highlight it again like I did for the other one. This one you can definitely see better. I don't know why the picture is moving so much. Hopefully we can have it not move. Okay. So this is going to be the plane that we are looking at. And as you can see, we have the midline of the body drawn on for us right over here. And if you visualize this in the sense that this line gets pushed back, we're going to notice that this line is going to be exactly on the midline of the body. And that's going to be really important because this is the plane that divides us directly in half, according to the midline. So directly into the left and the right portions. And this is going to be called the medial or sagittal plane. And as I mentioned, it divides us into the left and the right. So this is going to be, oops, can't see that. So this part, or this side, is the left, and then this side is going to be the right, and it divides us directly in half using the medial plane. And now we go on to our last plane. So I'm just going to highlight that one so we can see it easier. And this plane is going to be dividing us into the front and back parts of our body. So it's really helpful that they drew on the lines for us. So you can see that if this plane was pushed this way, then this line would lie exactly on the line that would divide us into the front and half parts of our body. Into the front and back parts of our bodies. So this plane is going to be called the frontal. Oops. The frontal. And there's also another name for it. It's called coronal plane. So frontal is pretty easy to memorize. It divides us into the front. Oops. Front and back parts of our body. Medial is on the midline. So this means right and left. And then for transverse, I'm not really sure if there's any technique to memorize what it is, but it is just upper and lower halves. So I'm going to erase this so it's not confusing. But those are our 3 planes. So now that we have covered everything on the pictures, here's a list of vocabulary that we went over today. And feel free to screenshot it if you think it will help you. You can even make flashcards out of it if you're studying for your test using this video. But overall, these are all the terms that we went over today. So I'm going to pause here for a little bit. Okay. So now that we've gone over everything, I really hope that you learned something from this video, and feel free to leave any comments about what you would like to see next. There's definitely so much content in the subject of anatomy and physiology that we can go over. So if you have any requests for any content, feel free to let us know. We hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to check out our other videos on science, math, English, and social studies. Thank you.